About 9 of them, I guess, except we didn't have their platoon commander. He stayed back with the radios.
Dix directed the SEALs to the roof of a building adjacent to the Cords compound.
I was tying the 57 on the roof, and the one SEAL that threw it over took a round over the left eye. We had a different problem then, and we had to get him out.
They raced to the Tactical Operations Center, where the SEAL commander had waited during the action.
That's when we evacuated all the civilians, Maggie, and the wounded SEAL. They left.
He had a real bad, head injury, and they put a tracheotomy in him, so that's otherwise he was just gonna, gurgle and just on his own secretions. He didn't make it. No, he didn't.
After Risher's death, the SEAL's commanding officer had ordered his men not to go back into town, leaving Dix and his PRUs to finish the job.
6 PRUs and I fought our way to the wall of the Cords building. One guy was wounded getting there, but not bad. And I pulled myself up on the wall, and the wall had a roof over it which connected to the main building. I started scrambling up there, and VC spotted us and started firing at us with B-40 rockets, and it started loosening up the tiles. I got to the top, and I started sliding back down. All of a sudden, all hell broke loose, and I could hear guys yelling below me, VC, and their actions working on their AK-47 started firing up at me. And the tiles started breaking all around, but they missed. I was hanging up by my elbows, and I went ahead, looked down to make sure the weapon was clear, fell through, and just as I fell down, they both emptied their weapons. They missed completely, and I was able to take them out with a burst from the Swedish K.
Dix proceeded to find the missing technicians and a young Vietnamese girl inside the trashed building. He quickly got them to safety. Once again, Dix and the PRUs headed back downtown. This time the mission was to secure the police station.
And we were getting quite a bit of fire out of there, and we assaulted the police station, and I noticed there was some fire within the compound. So that was a stroke of luck. Maybe there's some holdouts in there, policemen, and sure enough there were. And there were 6 that eventually 3 of them were killed and the other 3 wounded, but they fought like gladiators in there, and I was really impressed with them. And so we used the police station from then on kind of as a base.
The Viet Cong occupied the movie theater. Dix knew that inside he would find a number of the enemy.
And I saw VC run in there, the front door, and so we raced across there, caught one hell of a lot of fire going across that open area, and went to the side of the building. We got a little bit of break from the firing, and went down. We're clearing there were some small hooches, just an alleyway over. We didn't want to go down there and bypass any VC, so we thought we'd clear those as we went alongside of this building. Well, anyway, running down there, I looked over and there's this hole dug in between 2 buildings. Not really any cover over it, and there's an old guy sitting there in brown pajamas instead of the traditional black pajamas, and a strange looking haircut. And I said, he doesn't belong here. PRU said, no, he's okay. But I grabbed him anyway, and I just brought him along. This guy wasn't resistant much. Well, we got this side building where it says exit in Vietnamese, and opened the door, and see, all hell broke loose. They were in there. It was loud. I mean, we're talking about 15, 20 weapons on full automatic inside of a cement building. This guy I had with me was kind of there, standing with me. Well, I brought him around, and the firing stopped for just a short time. Opened it again, and I dashed in, brought my guy and 3 guys inside there. Well, when the door opened, it created that light, ray of light. And once we got down behind there, we're talking about the only light in there was the flashes of AK-47s. And we knew where we were, so we were firing everything else. It dawned on me, they stopped shooting, so they propped the door open, and I held this guy up long enough, and they stopped firing completely. And they started throwing their weapons down. And there was 19 prisoners. And then this guy we still didn't know who he was. He wasn't armed, but he had to be somebody they knew.
Months earlier, the unit had captured a Viet Cong general named Ba Hung. Dix had the PRUs bring him to the embassy house to identify the unknown man.
And when Ba Hung looked him in the eye, it was like the cat was out of the bag. He knew who we had. And Ba Hung looked at me and says, "It's number 1 VC, Sao Bay."
Dix was relentless. Now focused on the hotel, he returned to downtown.
We needed to clear out the hotel because it was the tallest building in town, and we knew they were directing mortars from there. As soon as we got close to the hotel, we started picking a lot of fire from the roof of the hotel and surrounding buildings. And we were in a critical situation. This hotel was almost like a column. It was narrow and 5 or 6 stories tall. And we were kicking open rooms and ran into a couple soldiers off duty with their lady friends. And so we snatched them up. Figured if we got some captured weapons, we'd give them to them and let them join in on the fight. The enemy could drop grenades down or anything the stairs, and they were doing it. But we could hear them, and we could duck back in and when they went off. We got on the roof, and there was the 2 VC that we had seen. They were dead, and there was another one that was wounded, and he was on his last breath. And so we got those 3 weapons and gave them to the Vietnamese that we had commandeered, or whatever you want to say, and left them there at the hotel. See, our biggest problem, we didn't have a big force. It was just like the Vietnam War being fought. You fight, take a place, and you got to leave it. You know, so we had to leave. I wanted to leave people there. I left the 3 wounded policemen at the police station, and I left these 3 guys there. Well, we found 2 more, so 5 guys there at the hotel. They didn't like it, but they were occupying it. But we looked down the street and we saw this flag that was flying on the flagpole in front of the province chief's house, and it had to go. And as we made our way down there, I don't know why the flag was so important to us, but it was a symbol. Flag is a big symbol, and the enemy flag was no different. About 100 yards before we got to Major Fung's house, we ran out of those houses to give us cover, so we had to get over to the street and just go right down the street, and there was a wall about 10 inches high. I didn't know I could get behind one. But that wall went all the way to a kind of like a roundabout in front of his house. It was more for decoration, with a flagpole in the middle. I took my radio off because it's sticking high up and I'm pushing it in front of me. And I could only fire my Swedish K up on laying it on the wall, because if I turned it up, they're gonna nail me for sure. The cement was stinging me in the face, and it was pretty spooky there. And wanted to divide my unit up, and I sent 5 across the street with the M60 machine gun to give us covering fire as the rest of us would assault Major Fung's house. I made my next move and ran across this open area, but just as I did, a VC ran out from the front door, right through the front gate, towards that flagpole where the VC flag was flying, and got right up to the bottom of it and stood there kind of defiantly, like, "You're not taking the flag down." And I kind of said, "Well, oh yes we are," you know, but I looked back to see if my guys saw what I saw. This guy was just standing there, and he wasn't trying to surrender. He had his weapon, and he's making a move like, "You're not taking that flag down." Well, I took him out, and we proceeded on. I pulled the flag down and stuck it in my shirt, and we ran into the front gate. I didn't want to use hand grenades because Major Fung's wife and kids may be there, and while I didn't want to hurt them for obvious reasons, I also wanted them so it might motivate him to get back into action. Fought our way up the stairs, exchanging shots as we went up. Shot one of them, and he was hit hard, but he wasn't down. And I got to the top of the stairs, and I'll be damned if they didn't just jump out of that window. I ran over there and expected to see 2 crumpled bodies down there, but there was none. At least 2 stories high, but they had a lot of incentive to get out of there. PRUs had come in behind me, and I could hear them arguing with somebody in the back room, yelling, and he had to come out, come out. And they're just about ready to hose them down, and it was a wife and 2 children. They hadn't killed them. Just then, our green pickup, our Ford pickup, I could hear it racing down the road, and they had left the police station, which was real timely because they pulled up in front and put Major Fung's wife and children in the vehicle and take her back to the Vietnamese headquarters.
After seeing his family alive and well, Major Fung quickly took command of his troops to help finish off the remaining Viet Cong.
I was a 24-year-old sergeant that was put in a position of great responsibility, and I intended to fulfill that. I wasn't going to let anybody down.
Drew Dix is the first enlisted Green Beret to have been awarded the Medal of Honor. He received a direct commission to first lieutenant and retired as a major after 20 years in the Army. Following his Army career, he operated an air service in Alaska and continued to work in support of government-sponsored programs. Recently, he has written a book, The Rescue of River City, describing in depth the actions for which he received the Medal of Honor. Today, in the fight against terrorism, Dix continues to serve our country as a Homeland Security advisor.
A man with very high integrity, honesty, and a very strong belief in what is right and wrong, and lives by those high standards.
The dedication of this statue gave me an opportunity to have a reunion with Nago, who was with me in the battle for Chow Duck, Jim Monroe, who was also with me, and Maggie, the nurse that we were able to rescue.
And when I saw them at the airport, Vietnamese men, I've never seen a Vietnamese man cry, and Nagel had tears in his eyes.
The Beyond the Medal stories provide only a glimpse of what truly happens on the battlefield. These four small-town heroes shy from the spotlight, but cannot be denied their place in history. Drew Dix and his men rescued helpless citizens. They attacked and exterminated 2 Viet Cong battalions. The Viet Cong general snagged by Dix was one of the highest-ranking officers captured during the Vietnam War. Bill Crawford became one of America's greatest World War II heroes in Altavilla, Italy. Had he not succeeded, his company most certainly would have suffered enormous casualties. Carl Sitter's George Company was one of the last to leave Korea's infamous Chosin Reservoir area. Sitter inspired his men to ignore their impossible situation and fight to hold their ground at all costs. In what could be one of the greatest individual military rescue efforts ever, Jerry Murphy repeatedly risked his life to save his men. Without his efforts on the Ongak Hill Mass in Korea, the Marine death count would have been much, much greater.
I remember Carl Sitter, Jerry Murphy, Bill Crawford as heroes, and I wanted to be like them. Years later, I became part of that foursome. All 4 of us were different. We come from the same town, but we're different. That there's no mold that makes individuals do what they have to do the right thing. It's just the opportunity. I believe there's a lot of fiber in these individuals, these kids now that would do what had to be done when the time came. And we don't know what that is. It's not all combat. Whether it's your work or whether it's helping somebody across the street or putting a fire out of a building or a burning car. I mean, you do what you have to do. Any young person looking at these statues can picture themselves there. Sure, they're going to look at it. Would they do what we did? My answer to you is yes, they would, because if they do what's right, because they'll know what it is.